Right, let's go back live to Sipha Mandla Goge. Sipha, we were looking at the shots earlier of people standing by watching this hearse make its way through that town of KwaNongoma to the Royal Palace. And I guess this is the opportunity they have to say their final goodbyes. Just tell us how close you are now to the Royal Palace and what's happening.
Well, you see those people, they are still out here in numbers here taking videos. We are now passing Benedictine Hospital in KwaNongoma. Let me tell you the importance of this hospital. I remember interviewing Health Minister Dr Zwelithini 2 days ago. He told me that this is where they met with the departed monarch in the early 80s, and this is where they got to engage with the departed king when Dr Zwelithini was deployed here as a student medical doctor at the time. That's when they started speaking about issues of health here. Many people are outside the hospital here to witness what is happening. We are about 10 minutes away from Wakheto Mthandayo Royal Palace. But with this slow movement of the convoy, Shahan, I can tell you that we are still at least for about an hour or so for us to get to Wakheto Mthandayo Royal Palace, because this convoy, look at that wide shot that Bongamkize is showing you. So traffic is backed up all the way from KwaNongoma town here, as we see some students here singing and dancing near the convoy. Their children basically paying their respects, joining Amabutho here. Others are using their cell phones to film here. I will show you on my right inside Benedictine Hospital here. You have children there lining up. They are unable to be on the streets, but they are inside the hospital, and that's where, in fact, no, that is a school. We are approaching the hospital, which is just behind us here. That's the school. Those are children basically paying their homage and final respect to the departed Zulu monarch here. The car that you see in front of us, the black car that my colleague Bongamkize is zooming in to show you, that car, inside that car there is Prince Mbonisi Zulu. Prince Mbonisi Zulu is King Bheki Zulu's second son. So he is the departed king's brother. The departed king was the eldest son, followed by Prince Mbonisi Zulu. He is the one who has had to go and perform those rituals inside the hospital, inside the mortuary there, before the remains of the departed monarch could be taken outside and then go to Wakheto Mthandayo Royal Palace here. I'm not sure if we will be able to go and show you what is happening, but Amabutho are saluting there. There is a stop for now, and there is a salutation that is being performed by Amabutho as the hearse, which is carrying the remains of the departed monarch, has stopped for now. There is that salutation by Amabutho. After that, we will take off again. To answer your question, Shahan, this tells you and it shows you that it will take a bit of time for us to get to Wakheto Mthandayo Royal Palace. But there is some movement for now, as we are seeing here members of the Royal Protection Services, the King's bodyguards, and who are also escorting this convoy here. They have gone back to their cars, and now we are making our way to Wakheto Mthandayo Royal Palace here, as Amabutho and the maidens behind continue to honor the departed monarch, Shahan.
All right, we are going to stay live on your visuals, Sipha Mandla, but let's bring in Dr Mungusi Guma, who's a cultural expert, joining us now live. Doctor, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. We've, of course, seen a break in tradition, specifically with this planting and how the late king is honored because of COVID-19. But what would you say is the best way for this to unfold, given the pandemic we're enduring?
Thank you, Shahan. It's difficult because both the pandemic and the passing of the king is something novel, something new, something that we can't. And so the best way to deal with it, of course, is just to try to control it. But I don't think it will be done with great success. But if people are able to at least minimize the impact, the negative impact, in terms of a super spreader.
So we're
But I
live.
don't think they can totally the compliance.
Yeah. Outside of COVID-19, Doctor, can we talk about the rituals and what we'll see happen over the next couple of hours? We are live on those visuals of the late Amazulu king's remains moving to the royal palace. Once it gets to the palace now, what happens in terms of tradition?
Remember, any father of a household, before he gets buried, he has to go via his homestead, as it were, to make the last both rituals and last passing by at his home. That is why, again, it was very difficult for many people to understand why they couldn't take family members home because of the COVID. So what's going to happen now is that the family will gather and they will do their family rituals, both in terms of talking to the king and expressing regret and so on, and thanksgiving for what he meant to them. And then secondly, they will also do some family rituals, which by their very nature are secret.
And then, of course, the late king's remains will be interred in a private ceremony from around midnight until around 3 o'clock in the morning. What happens there? Because, of course, that's a sacred activity and ceremony that the public does not get to see.
Yes, in fact, I think it's a mistake to say this is the wish of King Zwelithini. It is standard traditional practice that kings are buried at night. No one should actually, outside the close royal family, should know where the grave is, should actually even attempt to tamper with the grave, so that the king then gets buried at that time. And secondly, again, there are certain rituals that are done that accompany the burial of the person. It's not just the usual pastor says some few words and the coffin is lowered into the grave. No.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more that actually takes place. Though I don't know what exactly will happen here, but I know, for instance, because I've been to one such burial, where people actually take the human remains out of the coffin and break the coffin and bury the person with a skin of an animal, whether it's a cow skin or it's a lion skin. Now, I'm not sure specifically what they will do here.
Yeah.
But the point I'm making is that the family then engages in these private ceremonials, which are intended to connect the king with the past, to connect the king with the family as you trace it backwards, so that the burial that takes place of the king is not just of the king, it's the burial of the family line. That is why the Zulu people will then use that the king, which, by the way, it's a bad interpretation to say he's planted, because it doesn't capture the essence of what they are actually saying.
Oh, so can you explain it for us a bit better, please?
Yeah, no. The point is that, again, you then say the king has died. You use a particular word. The same way that when you bury the king, you don't say you are it's an interment of the king. Yes, we can say so in English. In fact, it's a better word than planted. But what it means in terms of its significance is that the king is joining the world of the ancestors. He then, out of him, basically, grows a new generation of leaders. That is the new king who will take over after he's gone. That's the significance of it. That the king, you know what the English say, the king is dead, long live the king. I think that's what the English say.
Yeah.
But that's what it means. It's a connection. That's why people talk about there shouldn't be a vacuum and all of that. It's a connection between those who are living and the world of the ancestors. So that's the one. And then the king, as a new member of the ancestral world, then passes his baton to a new generation of leadership. That's the new one who is actually then growing to take over, again, not just from him, but from the long line of leadership. That's why if you notice, I mean, when they talk about him, they will then say, Uzwelithini kabheki Zulu. And then they will talk about Bheki Zulu and call his father and so on, to establish that uncut line of heritage.
And then, of course, many people are asking the question about succession, and this, of course, is in total contrast to what we see in the United Kingdom. What can you tell us about how the succession works when it comes to the AmaZulu nation?
In fact, let me start off. It's definitely true in Southern Africa. Firstly, succession does not belong to the eldest son. That has to be cleared immediately, put out of the way. That succession doesn't belong to the eldest son. And despite what some people accuse us of, Africans, the successor is not who is your father. The successor is who is your mother. Your mother determines your capacity to succeed, in the sense that the nation will then decide that so-and-so must be married in order to give birth to the heir. So that's the first. It could be the first wife. The dignity that resides with the first wife is separate from the dignity of bearing the heir. And secondly, within that context, you never talk about succession whilst people are alive. You never do. You just don't. It's impolite and imprudent to do that. That is why then you see that the Zulu family actually is avoiding to engage on the issue of the successor. There are some people who already know who will succeed. And as I say, it might not be what the public expects to be, because then the family decides who will be the successor to the king, and then it will be said, so-and-so's son will be the successor. That's why I'm saying it is your mother that confers on you the right to succeed.
Yeah.
And the kingdom will then decide on that and say, so-and-so's son, it won't be Shahan will succeed. No, it will be so-and-so's son will succeed, will be the heir to the king. And secondly, I think to say that there will be a will read is just accommodating modernity and present day things, because again, in the African sense, when the spirit separates from the body, we don't believe that the person is dead. And therefore, you cannot talk about succession because the person is still alive. And then the family is allowed to mourn. And then after that, then an announcement can be made. So that to say they will make an announcement before the end of this week is really accommodating pressures of modernity. But I think they say, okay, let's wait till we at least bury the king, and then we will then announce the successor. But ordinarily, it wouldn't happen like that. If you look at the succession in the Zulu royal family, you will notice that there are, in fact, sometimes years in between the one king and the next one. It's not immediate, that because there's no ever-ready person. For all we know, the person who's going to succeed could be living in England, as it happened with King Mswati. So that when the people there who simply want to do that, then you have to wait for the successor to come in from England, because that was the case with King Mswati when the father passed on. It's a whole notion of how we look at death. That death is not the immediate separation of the spirit and the body. It's simply a migration from one state of being to another.
Doctor, thank you so much. Thank you so much for educating us on all of this. It's obviously a time where South Africans need to know exactly what the rituals are and what is considered as the late Amazulu king, Goodwill Zwelithini, is laid to rest. And of course, interred, as you say, would be the most appropriate translation a bit later on tonight. If you are just joining us, you're